Hi everyone, this is Stephanie. I go by StampJG here on YouTube and at my blog at stampjg.com. Thank you for joining me today. Today we have a project made with the We Are Memory Keepers bookbinding guide and the We Are Memory Keepers pocket punch board. This cute little gift book features 3 pockets that you can tuck love notes into or gift cards for your loved one for this upcoming Valentine's Day. Please add any different types of paper or what you have on hand, and you can make it a gift card for somebody's birthday or any other special occasion. I'm just showing it for Valentine's Day. So if this is something that you're interested in making, come on along. So let's gather some materials. First, let's start with some pretty paper. I am using sheets out of a Recollections pad by Michaels. But any paper that suits your occasion, whether it be a birthday or all occasion or florals or anything like that, will do. And I'm using a 12 by 12 pad because these sheets all need to be cut for this current project larger than 6 by 6. I also cut 2 sheets of cardstock that match my project, and this is the exact size of my pockets and envelopes. They are 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. You'll need scissors, of course, and some strong tape. I am using Sookwang tape, but I guess be creative, or score tape, or any other type of tape that's out there that's a strong tape will do. I have a link in my description below for what I get off of Amazon. You'll also need something to bind your little book with, and I have gathered a few different types of things: baker's twine, waxed linen. This is metallic embroidery floss, and both of these are just variegated embroidery floss. So I'm not sure what I'm going to use just yet, but we have some things to choose from. In addition, you are going to need the We Are Memory Keepers pocket punch board, and I have showed you how to use this in depth in a previous video. I will link it up in the cards and down in the description below. You'll also need the We Are Memory Keepers bookbinding guide and the little toolkit that comes with it. We will be binding this with a Japanese stab binding that is decorative. Let's start with our pockets. We are going to be making pockets that are 3 1/4 wide by 5 1/4 long. And I'm going to make 3 pockets. 2 are going to have no flap, and 1 is going to have a flap. So in order to determine what size paper we need, we'll take out our little guide. And the first measurement is going to be, and I'm looking on the inches side, this has an inches side and a side that has centimeters. So that's for everybody who needs to use centimeters. They're on the back. But on the inches side, I've determined my projects need to be 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. So I come down. My guidelines are at D and 2, so we need to remember those. And for a pocket with a flap, I need to cut a piece of paper that is 7 inches by 6 3/4. 7 and 6 3/4. And for the 2 pockets that are not going to have flaps, I need to cut paper that is 7 inches by 6 inches. So I will cut some paper and we will be right back. Okay, so here are my papers. Let's start with the pocket that is going to have a flap. So I've cut this one bigger. And I need to mark the side so I can keep track, and I've already forgotten. This is why I do this. Nobody else may need to do this, I just know I do. That's the 6 3/4, so the 7-inch side is here. Make sure yes, that's my 7-inch side. So the 7-inch side, we know from our previous video, the side that corresponds to the first measurement has to stay up at the top. It has to do with the numerical guide. That makes sure that your project is always straight when you're turning and punching your paper. come over to our pocket punch board, and we had to remember that our guides need to be set at D2. So this is A through F. I'm going to put D2, and the arrow on the top is pointing in, and 2 here up at the top, and the arrow is pointing down. The 7-inch side of this particular piece of paper needs to stay up at the top. So no matter where I punch it or what I do with it, it has to stay up at the top in order for this to work out well and the flaps to come out perfect. So hold on, let me get organized here. Since this is the pocket that we have flaps, I'm going to go ahead and cut all 4 sides. Take the little knob for the blade side and put it in the channel and just run it across. I'm not sure that cut. I missed a spot. We're going to take our paper and flip it horizontally again with our 7-inch side up at the top because it corresponds to the flaps. I flip this back over. To score this, we're going to need to pull out our little guides, our scoring guides. And our score tool. Line it back up. I can take these little pieces off and use them again. And I can begin over here. There's a dotted line on the board, and I can begin over here and kind of find the groove that the score tool fits in. Give it a nice score. Now on this side, I'm going to flip my board around so you can see it in the camera. You can tell that the guide is here. This is going to take up the entire guideline to score, and this is a 7-inch 6 3/4 side of the paper. So I cannot see the guide here or here, and I'm going to have to rely on this dotted line up here. Come down and find the little groove and give it a decent score. And then I'm going to flip my paper over so my flap is up at the top and do it on this side. Now if this is too fiddly, the other thing that you can do is take this to a scoreboard and line it up on a scoreboard. That will work just as well. Dotted line here, or I can begin over here and just push my tool this way. And my pocket with flaps is all scored. Let's go on to the pocket that just has a notch. And I can tell this is my long side, and I needed to keep it the 7-inch side up at the top because I know this is where my flaps are going to be. And on this, because there is no flap at the top, we go ahead and just cut the bottom. I only have to do this twice. And I'm going to flip this over. So the only flap we have is at the bottom to close your pocket, and the top is perfectly flat. I only have to score along 3 sides now to create this pocket. Now we're going to assemble our little pockets with some strong tape. Now, on the pockets that do not have a flap, I want to go ahead and put a notch. So I'm going to pull up my pocket punch board, and I also know that when we did the guide, this was D and 2, so I can put it between the 2 guidelines that are D. Put it way up at the top, punch, and I've got a thumb notch on it. Again, line this up in the middle, all the way up to the top. It needs a little bit of force, and there we go, a thumb notch. And then our little pieces here. So we are done with using the pocket punch board, and we can put this away. Now that we've done our 3 pockets that are going to be the inside of our little gift book, it's time to go ahead and punch the cover and bind it. I have 2 pieces of cardstock that are exactly 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. It's the same measurement as my pockets. I've decorated the front cover a little bit, and I've left the back cover plain. I also have a piece of scrap cardstock. We're going to use this to figure out where to start punching our holes for the binding. In the booklet that comes with the We Are Memory Keepers book binding guide, in the back there is this stitching template. The one that we're going to work with today is the one in the middle in the green, and I think I've seen on the internet it's called tortoiseshell. To me it kind of looks like houses, so I'm going to refer to them as houses. And because our project is so narrow or small, I'm only going to be able to fit 3 of those onto my project. I will have a slide that I'll insert here that you can see the graphic a little bit bigger. The easiest way I have found to start this project is to take a piece of scrap paper that's the exact size of your cover and determine where you want to start your holes. In this, I want to start in the middle. I'm going to have 3 motifs along the edge, or 3 little houses, and I want the middle hole of the middle house to be in the middle of the cover. This way I know everything will be lined up. To do that, I will need to mark the middle of this scrap piece of paper. Now if you're good at math, you will realize that if the paper is 3 1/4 inches wide, that your middle piece is actually 1 5/8. And it does not matter where along the edge you mark this, you just want it to be visible. You want to be able to figure that out very clearly when you set it into your guide. Now that we have our scrap piece of paper ready, I'm going to put it into the guide and I'm going to zoom us in a little bit. A guide with the mark in the middle, and I'm going to put it on the We Are Member Keepers bookbinding punch on the side here that is for side binding, and I'm going to line it up at the very bottom. If I kind of put my nail here, I can tap it against this and make sure it's perfect if I want. Slide the cover on. Make sure it stays straight for the moment by locking it in. You can see here, this is the mark I made on my paper that shows the very middle of my paper that I want to punch. The hole closest to this is going to be the middle. So I'm going to turn it on the side a little bit so you can see there's holes. It actually corresponds to one of the holes that is not marked with the circle. But it is the middle of my paper. It's the middle of my project. And again, I just have a scrap paper here. I am going to take a Sharpie and I am going to put a little mark near this hole on the guide. So I know that when I put my actual project in here, this is the very middle of my project. And don't worry, Sharpie will come off your guide with a little bit of hand sanitizer and a cotton swab. So let's take our covers. I'm going to do one at a time, and we'll start with the back cover. And again, I'm going to put this in my template. I'm going to put this in the bookbinding guide, and I'm going to line it up here at the bottom. It's a drop off here, but I've got my kind of nail right against it, and I can tap it against my nail if I want to stop it. It's actually easy to see in person to line up. I put the guide in place and lock it down. So if you recall from our slide, and I'll insert it again here, the markings that we want to make in our paper, the piercings we want to make in the paper, are actually little triangles, and I need 3 of them to be able to do the style of binding I want. And again, I'm going to turn this into the light a little bit, and you can see here is where I made the mark that corresponds with the middle hole. So I want to make a triangle with my holes. So this is going to be the middle of the triangle. And then I want to make the legs of it. This one here and this one here. Now I'm going to leave my awl in here for just a minute. I'm going to pull the project down so that you can see. I also now need to make the next triangle. And that was in this, the leg was in this hole here. So I'm going to skip a hole and I'm going to put my next triangle here. And this hole. So this hole, and this hole. I have the one in the middle already done, and I'm going to slide this down to the bottom, and we can see this is the hole from the middle triangle. So I'm going to skip a hole, and I'm going to make my last triangle here. when I take the paper out, you can see I actually have 3 sets of triangles placed along the edge of my binding. Now, let's go ahead and do the other cover. I'm going to take my paper, line it up in the bottom, because this is where I'm working from. You can line it up from the top. You can actually put it in the middle of your guide if you really wanted to. Whoops, let's do that straight here. And we're going to do this again. On my plastic guide where I've kind of made a little mark here, it's the middle of my project. And this is where I'm going to put the center of my middle triangle. Go to the top triangle here, the bottom of the triangle here. And since I'm near the bottom, let's go ahead and go down. I'm going to skip this hole. This is going to be the leg of my bottom triangle. The middle of it. And I'm going to come down to this one. And I'm going to scoop my project down so we can see the top. Again, this is the middle. And here's the leg of my middle triangle. I'm going to skip this hole and I'm going to start my triangle here. Come up to the middle and down to the other side of my triangle. And I'm just twisting my awl just to kind of make sure the hole is round. We're going to be stitching through each of these a couple of times, and I just want to make kind of a round hole. There's no real need to do that. I think my thread is going to be a little thicker than probably what is good, but that's the reason why I'm twisting the awl. And again, we can see I have perfectly spaced holes. Now for the pockets, I'm going to do each one separately. Now that we've punched all of our holes, we are done with the bookbinding guide. But we will need to take the needle out of the kit. And in this case, there is waxed, I think it's probably nylon. There is wax thread for you to use on your project if you want. I'm going to choose to use some embroidery floss for this one. Here we go. We have our pockets and our cover and our back cover. Now that we've punched our holes and I've attached a binder clip to keep everything together, we're going to start stitching. Now, one of the things that with Japanese style stab binding is that the pattern on the front is going to be exactly the same as the pattern on the back. Threads always go around the binding. I keep calling it a binding, I apologize. Threads go around the outside of the spine and sometimes on the sides to make sure to keep everything together. Finally, the other thing to remember is that you never stitch the same line twice. You might use the same hole several times, but you never stitch the same line twice. So lines will never be doubled on either the front or the back. I have threaded my needle with 3 strands of variegated embroidery thread. This is DMC. For reference, if this is number 99, it's a pretty pink and maroon. and I've just threaded it. There is no knot. I'm going to start from the back. Where you start is where your knot is going to be. And I've decided for simplicity we'll start on the back. Sometimes you can start from inside between the pages, but for now I think we'll just start on the back. And I'm going to come from the back to the front and leave a long tail. And I'm going to just put a little tiny piece of washi tape there so it doesn't come undone. Now, one of the things that I found when I was working with this, and I will zoom in a little bit closer, is that sometimes that the holes that are made by the awl with the bookbinding guide are not quite wide enough for several passes of thread to go through. And to resolve that, you can put your needle in and kind of make the holes just slightly wider. You could use a bigger awl. You could also, if you wanted to, use the holes that are already punched in here as a guideline to come back in with a hole punch and use really thick thread with it. That would be good too. But let's zoom in and start stitching. Okay, so we are zoomed in. Again, I have started on the back and I've attached the tail down with a little piece of washi. And again, Japanese stab binding wants to come around the outside of the spine and back through the same hole that we started with. And you can adjust to be straight. From here, we're going to go to the next hole. You can pick either to the right or to the left. It does not matter. And since we've come over, now we need to come back through and around the spine and down through the same hole. And you can pull firmly. Now I'm on the back and I need to come back up through the middle. And I'm going to come back down to the hole on the right. Left, the other right. So we are going to complete one whole house. I'm calling these houses even though they're not, before I move on to the next house. I've ended on the back, so I'm going to come around the spine and back through the same hole. You want to adjust your little edges here. And I've ended on the back, and I want to complete the house on the back as well. Go back through the middle hole. Oops. From this point, we have completed one whole house. We can move to the left or to the right. Does not matter at this point. I'm going to move to my right and connect to the other roof. And now we're going to start the process all over again. We're on the back. We want to come around the binding into the same hole. Oops. And pull firmly. Go to the next hole to start the roof line. And I'm going to come around the binding and back up through this hole. And you want to try not to split your stitches like that. Nice firm tug. Come back up to the roof. Pull back through. From the back, I'm going to go into this side. And again, we want to go around the spine. Come back up the same hole. And complete the roof by coming down the middle. Now from the back, what I want to do is I want to wrap around this side binding. So I'm coming from this roof line all the way around the outside and back down in to this hole. And pull firmly. On the back of the book, because it needs to be exactly the same as the front, we're going to connect back to this roof line here. And from the front, I'm just going to move over to the next house. Yeah, pull firmly here. I'm on the back of the book. I want to come around the binding and through the same hole. I might have to pull firmly. Now that I'm on the back, I'm going to put my needle through one of the side holes. Whoops. Come out the front and come around the binding, come around the spine. Come back up through the roof to complete one roof line. This hole needs to be a little bit bigger. Come into the next hole. Whoops. Come around the spine. Pull firmly and come back up through the roof line. This hole's getting full of stitches. It's a little tight in there. Okay, from the back, I am going to go ahead and wrap around the side. Come back in through this hole. Okay, I got one of these. Whoops. I'm going to pull firmly, make sure that's straight, and here is where we end. I'm going to take my needle and go around a couple of these threads. Let me zoom. So I've come under a couple of threads. I'm going to undo my tail. Get rid of the needle. And go ahead and tie a knot. Here we have a cute little book made out of pockets. And you can move your pockets over a little bit to give them a little bit of flexibility. So here we have a Valentine's Day pocket gift book made with the We Are Memory Keepers pocket punch board and the We Are Memory Keepers book binding guide. We took decorative paper and made 3 pockets. Cut covers and bound them with a pretty decorative stitch. This is a great gift for anybody you love. You can put cute ideas on it or use it for a gift card holder. You can tuck secret messages into the pocket. Or just have fun and make the person smile. Well, thank you so much for joining me today to make this cute little gift book. I hope that you had a lot of fun. I hope that you got inspired to try out your tools and see the possibilities of what you can make. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below and I will do my best to get back with you. Also, if you have any type of other projects or tools that you would like to see in action, please leave them down in the comments and I will see what I can do. Thank you again for joining me. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.